So we'll just start our gathering with the people who are here. I'm sorry, Barbara is having trouble getting connected. Barbara, if you can hear me, you may want to disconnect and come back in. See if that works better. And Dottie, how are you feeling? You've had some challenges.
Okay, you're a lot better. I'm a lot better. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, your internet is kind of wobbly, and I think we're all going to be challenged with that, it looks like. So yeah, I think we can just get started. I am welcoming you on behalf of the Florida Climate Conversation to Action program, and this is with the Climate Collaboratory. That's a pilot project of We the World and the University of Florida Extension. And we have come through, I guess we're on 6.5 sessions that we've done since October. And this is kind of the midway point. We'll have another session on energy coming up in 2 weeks, but we wanted to just get together and see what's happening and what is how we can work together on this climate conversation. And so why don't we just start with a go around, and how about if we start with a little, if you want to just feel for a minute, one moment, and it could be in the distant past, it could be last week, it could be this morning. But I want you to think of one moment when you heard something about what's happening with our climate or the planet or anything along those lines. And how that felt to you. What was the emotion that it brought up in you? And what does it make you decide to do? So we're talking about getting from conversation to action. And welcome, Barbara. So glad you made it in. You were hanging for a while there. So who would like to begin with just a moment and a feeling and a decision? And maybe I'll begin. I'll start. Prime the pump, as my friend Joanne says. So probably for me, the big moment was taking a course. It was an internet course from the Wilmette Institute with 5 Baha'i, or actually 4 Baha'i friends. There were 5 of us that would get the material during the week and then get together on the weekend to discuss it. And I learned so much about what was happening, the science, the denial, which was all new to me at that point. This is in 2013. And really the thing that got me was the spiritual, the oneness of all of our spiritual traditions, from the world's religions and indigenous wisdom. And with that, I made a decision. Oh, and I felt scared and angry and a huge sense of responsibility, because I grew up as a daughter of an oil executive. And I felt like, I've got something I need to do. And I have just totally focused my work for all these years since on climate education and trying to put together a program which has resulted in this pilot project with the University of Florida. So that's my climate story for today.
Well, I guess this is Barbara. Let me see, am I not muted? Okay. And I suppose I'm a geographer by training, even though I was not what they call a human geographer. Geographers divided into what physical and human. But the good thing about geography is that it's even within the discipline, it's interdisciplinary. So even when looking at economic geography, what human beings are doing, I'm always conscious of what's going on in the so-called natural environment, for lack of a better word. So this idea that we're interconnected is something that just I've come to know professionally, but I remember it may have some genesis when I was growing up and with my grandmother. I was raised by my grandmother, and she, her father's fathers, everybody farmed in those days in the South, or had a little bit of land that they raised things with. And I remember when a lot of times we would be, oh, it rained, and we were like, oh, it's raining, oh, it's just going to mess things up. We want to do things like that. And she said, the farmers need the rain. And ever since then, when I think of, oh, it's raining, it doesn't look so good or whatever, the farmers need the rain, the flowers need the rain. So this idea of this connectivity, that we need this nexus of things occurring in the climate. And I think even with the current oil companies, and I just said that because you mentioned that, Sue, that there is beginning, I'm hoping to be a recognition that this is something we must look at. Because I remember years ago when President Clinton, he was talking to the oil companies, and he said, listen, don't think of yourself as an oil company, because if you only think of yourself as an oil company, if we talk about the problems with fossil fuels, you get scared. Think of yourself as an energy company. And if you think of it that way, we've got much more energy from non-oil type products than we have with them. So I think eventually we'll get around to that. Either that, or we'll just all go to hell in a handbasket. It won't matter.
Thank you, Barbara.
And I invited my friend Sam Stafford, and I'm just crazy about him and his wife Harriet. He might still be an administrative law judge, and his wife works at Santa Fe College.
And so this time I'm the or. I am here.
Okay, Harriet. Oh, that's my friend Harriet. Okay, man. Great.
Thank you for that. Couldn't have had a better segue. Visual, because we're having ISP issues as well. But Barbara's story is much like my own, and the wisdom of grandparents. And this idea that you are one who's put here to be a custodian and good steward of the planet. And it has to do with a Native American grandmother, African-American father who married, left the Oklahoma Territory, went east to the South. And in that process of being informal horticulturalists and having a family garden, which also served the neighborhood, that was an immigrant neighborhood. So this nexus of inclusion based on being inclusive people, realizing that we have the privilege of the earth being one home, was something that we grew up with and had respect for. So as a college student, I have a chemistry background, but also an African-American history background. All those things were that nexus. There was no separation for the truth between those things about what it means to be co-workers and wayfarers on planet Earth. After that, of course, I watched a daughter become an engineer who is also involved with social entrepreneurship, who invites us to be good custodians of the planet. and how energy and production of goods and means are meant to be a source of material good, right? And equity economically, and equity in a social justice realm. Same thing for the one who's the artist that Barbara encouraged, who's that voice of agency culturally, and
He's
also my
wonderful.
other two kids. So I'm pleased, Sue, we're talking about those touchstones that lend itself to a purposefulness and an attitude about we're capable of doing this if we do it together.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed.
That one human family thing. So it takes us back to those grandmothers and grandfathers and the extended family.
I love how all the grandmothers are coming in. Yes. So one of the a guiding light for our work with the Climate Collaboratory is the Earth Charter that's now 20 years old. And the quote that grabs my heart is, "We are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny." And so we are telling a story. We each have our individual stories, and together we're telling the story of the human family. And so that's kind of the basis of this sharing of stories about the time we're living in. And so I see that Dottie is on the phone now. Maybe June, are you available to chime in here? I didn't hear that, June. Are you guys available or no? I think maybe not right now. Okay. Dottie, would you like to share?
Go
There you-
ahead. No, not right now.
Okay. Okay. And June said no, not now. I can't see June. I think that's a no. Okay. Well, so the idea is with this climate conversation that we each have a story. We've been for all these months figuring out different ways to tell those stories. We do have a workshop that we do on Tuesdays where we help to share climate stories and then discuss how we can take this to a wider audience. And what we're looking at now is getting ready over the summer to start a community-wide climate conversation to action program in the fall. And what that looks like is if we each have a story, then we want to get as many people in our community as possible talking about climate change, doing this through the media, doing it in a way that's fun to engage children and youth and adults and elders, and helping to kind of normalize this climate conversation and help to just make it part of life that we are handling this. We can do this. I want my grandchildren and their generation to know that the adults have this covered. You know, we are handling it and we can do this. And so the enthusiasm that comes from storytelling and games and music, and we're hoping to develop a musical play with children and youth, and just make it as engaging and fun as we possibly can to bring some playfulness and joy to this very serious business of taking care of life on Earth. The stakes are so high. So each of you comes from you're all actively engaged in the community. And what I'd like to talk about is how you can see the organization or organizations, maybe you have several, that how could you see this climate conversation taking place in your life?
Well, I'm with the United Nations Association, and just a couple, let's see, I think it was 2019, our UN Day was about climate climate change, and we had just a really wonderful group of young people who were participating in the program and talking about some of the things they were doing. So that was quite encouraging. They were from our public schools, our high schools, our private schools. So really, it was starting early, and they're working on that. And of course, that's one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which the UNAs, the United Nations Associations, we're the advocates, are supposed to be, helping our local communities address. And this is something that we see constantly in our local community. So I think, Sue, you in your climate collaborative and others, we're definitely working on that. And I think and as a whole, we human beings, I think we're hearing this. I think we're hearing this. People are not as reluctant. I even, and I don't want to talk politics, but even I was hearing some of the so-called right-wing people say, we as conservatives are the stewards of our planet. And so therefore we should be working with it instead of working against it. We've just gone through an era of just, running roughshod over the planet. And now I think there is some recognition, there's a lot of recognition that for us to have better lives or good lives, we need to take care of the planet, because there was an idea that, oh gosh, we can't live the good lives that our parents lived if we get too cautious. But I think now we're a little more concerned that we need to work in coordination, in cooperation with, nature and climate, and not the rulers of the earth approach that we sort of had, at least in, Western culture, and following up in others.
Well, I was
I
there
think,
at
I
that.
think it's been heard. Mhm.
Pardon?
No, I just said, I think it's not as much of an uphill push as it used to be.
That's
I
right.
think we have an ear.
Yes, and I love the way you're looking for ways to work with people that have traditionally been at odds with each other on this issue, but we can now find common ground and work together on these issues. Anyone else? Harriet, I know you have some organizations you work with. Can you see a climate conversation happening?
I think typically with the organizations that I have the privilege of learning with, their focus has been on young people, particularly beginning with elementary, middle, and high school students, knowing that they are open to not just the discovery aspect of what science teaches us about making the planet habitable, but that these young people are curious about how they're going to contribute to that continuing. I mean, what's going to be my role in 5 years? When not just when I'm an adult, but when I'm trying to find ways in which I can have more. Well, I'll tell you what one of the children told me. And they said, there's a need for us to improve the green spaces that we already have. And I thought that that was very interesting, because it told me they have been observers and they've noticed the change that's taking place. And the fact that when they're in nature, that it allows them to think more creatively, that they get to be more in touch with who they are and want to be. And to hear that from someone, and in this case, it was an 11-year-old, but then hear the same sentiment echoed by someone who was a high school student, and had just taken this is fascinating. They had a teacher who thought it was important to bring back, what did they call her course? Oh, the sense that science should make in everyday life. She had a unit on that, so that it didn't sound like some theory in a textbook, but it was brought home. So they had to notice what was going on in their own communities and also within a certain number of states. So all that to say, when it was brought home for them, they decided it was important to make sure that the home they occupy, which was Earth, right, was something that they were vested in on a regular basis. So we had children at a school decide that they not only were going to do gardening to learn certain lessons about plants, but they were going to have a garden because they wanted to help feed neighbors. And they actually did that. Do you see what I'm saying? So that
Yes.
that purposefulness comes forth and they get motivated. And then there's something that triggers their thinking about, okay, what's my next step? So that's what I've seen happen. That little bit of knowledge and fascination begins, and the discovery becomes a way in which commitment takes root.
Mm.
So I'm looking at it perhaps with groups who focus on education, but it's not, that's why you say this thing. It's lifestyle. To kids, it's lifestyle. That's what I'm saying. It's my lifestyle. It's what we're
Yes.
all entitled to.
That's good. That's good. When we're doing it just as, that's just the way we are. We're every day thinking about the environment and thinking of ways that we can just work in coordination with it.
So Barbara, I was at that UN Day celebration, and I had some interaction after that event with those young people. And
Okay.
to be able to give voice to young people who are so active like they are. And Harriet, you certainly have some voices that we would love to hear. And so this idea of telling our climate stories is not just for the adults and elders. We need to get the children telling their stories. And the way we've kind of organized this is that we all have, like my story was going back to 2013. And sometimes I go all the way back to the first time we saw the Earth from space in 1968. That's when I became an environmentalist of sorts. And the idea that we each have things that have happened in our past. We each have things that we are doing or want to do now. And then when we get into this future thinking, the world I want to see and I want to grow up in, what would it take for that to be part of our story? And so finding ways to engage the children is part of that. And so we have a storytelling adventure, and we're trying to pull it together in a way that the young children can act it out on a game board and with different settings, so that they're telling the story in their own way in their own lives, and then sharing that um, on either writing or videos, or bringing it some way into our climate, what we call a collaborative storytelling adventure. And then for
So
the,
is this something that the Climate Collaborative is doing? I mean, when you say we're doing this
yes, that
with
the
children.
climate
Okay.
collaboratory. So really
Okay.
what's happening is this, I've been dreaming up this program for years. Jennison and I have talked about it for 5 years already. And so to be able to do this is really a bounty and a blessing for me to have a way to think about getting this going from conversation to action, and really providing tools and resources for helping people to get into action. And Harriet, for the young people, we have several different action planning programs that I would love to share with you and Barbara. And we are just looking for ways to get this going in the schools. One, well, we have two wonderful connections now. I think it's been a couple of months ago. We had John Nix from the school board, who is active with the school gardening programs. And I don't know if you know him, but he's also a regenerative agriculture proponent and has his own family farm that's been in for generations. So he is really excited about the possibility of doing things in the schools on this. And the other one that I spoke with recently is his name is Dave Conser, and he's the city arborist for Gainesville. And he's very excited about getting tree planting and food forest planting going in the schools. And so helping to facilitate the kinds of projects like this that people want to have happen. And let's see if we can't get them scaled and going on a big, getting it going in a big way in our community. So we're looking at doing a county-wide climate conversation and seeing the story that we can tell at the end of the year. So by Earth Day next year, we want to have a wonderful story to tell.
And how are you doing this? Are you you're meeting with people and recording them or writing them down? How does this look?
Okay. What we have, and I should have it right here, but I'll send it by email.
Okay.
We have two forms. One is for telling your climate story in the past and the present, and the other is for the imagined future. And we have little just guidelines, very simple story starting kinds of things. And the kind of story that we did at the beginning of this session is exactly what we're after. Just a very simple, when I learned this, I felt that, and I decided to what, and help people to see that they can take action. But the piece that is challenging for me and us is getting the resources into the right hands for the right people. And so making them available and accessible and easy to find the right one, because you can't have just the climate education program. It's 100 different things that people need to be doing depending on who they are and what their circumstances are. And but the idea that we can help each other to be inspired, to work together, and kind of sharing this we consciousness that we are all in this together and we can do this. Oh, and then the other piece is, yes, we do record things. We have a lot of Zoom conversations and record them. And what I'm doing is getting them onto a blog. And actually, what I haven't told you about is that we have a youth and elder climate conversation that we call the Earth Flash Game Show. And we're going to be premiering our game show on Tuesday next week. And I'll send you the link for joining on that. And you can either see it live, it's at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, or you can watch the recording after. But it's our first try at doing a game show that will kind of be the explanation of how this program works. And I hope it will be clear. We're doing our best. Hmm. But the idea, let's say, for example, Barbara, that if the United Nations Association wanted to do something with the Climate Collaboratory for UN Day, we would have a conversation about that, invite the members to tell their own climate stories. We do have a workshop that we do on Tuesdays, where people can come in and get some, do some conversation and helping each other to get these climate stories together. And then we're figuring out ways to take it from conversation, kind of turning around from the um, inward focus, turning around and taking it to other organizations and helping to engage more and more people in this climate conversation.
Okay. Well, listen, Sue, I'm gonna have to go now, but we'll be continuing to talk. As I
Very
said,
good.
I didn't know what the UN 2021 theme is. I think it looked like they were saying something about sustainable economic development or whatever, but
Okay.
but climate involves everything, so
Yeah,
we'll just keep in touch.
very true. So
Yeah.
we do, the Climate Collaboratory is also focused on all of the Sustainable Development Goals. So
Oh,
that's
yeah, for
probably,
sure. Well,
that's,
they all interrelate, and that's one
yeah.
thing that as a geographer, that everything is connected. It just is, and so I like the fact that we're recognizing this.
Yes.
The hip bone connected to the thigh bone. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Okay.
I
And
appreciate it.
thank you, Harriet.
See you in touch.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Jake.
Hey, Harriet. So Jennison had something come up and I'm sorry she's not able to join in tonight, but I'm so glad you're
Oh.
here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that day ended earlier. I didn't want to miss that. Sometimes because we're working with young people who also play sports, our work hours extend beyond regular school hours.
Right.
So I'm glad that today I was able to be in touch with most of them that I had to speak with, and a few seniors who are finalizing a decision about where they might go to college. So thank you, Sue, for scheduling at 6 to help that work for me.
Good.
That it also too.
So is there a way that we could combine what's going on? What I would love to do is find a common ground with the UNA and the Sustainable Development Goals and your program. I don't know if that's
Sure,
possible.
I think we could start talking about it and see what might happen. And like you, I remember that UNA Day celebration with the high schoolers that came, but I remember there are a number of kids who were elementary school students who came to perform.
Yes,
And
yes.
those same kids, a lot of them from different elementary and middle schools. Now, those are some of those young people who are thinking about, well, this is part of a lifestyle, and they don't see it as a separation once they catch on to how important it is for us to take care of our earth home.
Yes, yes.
So I would like to explore it, Sue, and see what might happen with it.
Awesome. Okay, let's do it.
All right. Well, thank you, Sue.
And thank
I
you,
appreciate
Harriet.
this so much.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming. It's wonderful to
Well,
have you
wasn't
here.
it cool to think about, family with respect to, yes, our parents, but also grandparents and, legacy that they've given us. That's so important.
Yes. And I know
I
Barbara.
like the idea of the stories. It brought back wonderful memories and practices that we still make part of our everyday life.
Wonderful. Wow. Thanks for sharing yours. It's really nice.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I'm sending verbal hugs.
Love
And
you.
hopefully love you too, and hopefully there'll be better internet connection next time.
Okay. You take care. Give my love to
You
your
too.
family.
Oh, I'll do that happily. Do the same from me.
Okay, thanks, Harriet.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye, Miss Jennison.
Wherever you are.
Right. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
So Jennison, if you ever get to watch this, we had a good meeting and thank you.